Welcome to the To Be Frank Show with Zacc and Strack. Frank Zaccanelli has been in the world of domestic and international business and professional sports for 40 years. And as a former minority owner, president, and general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, he's been asked to comment on current events and national news for most of his professional career. Sarah Strackhouse has worked as a reporter, videographer, graphic designer, anchor, and producer at Fox News, the CW, CBS, NBC, and Time Warner cable stations across the country for more than 12 years. And no matter where she landed, her search was for the truth. In a time where journalistic integrity has come to be questioned, people are looking for a place to find just the facts.
Welcome to the To Be Frank Show. Happy Monday, everyone. We're so excited to be bringing you this show today. Of course, before we get started, before we get into our live news, we want to make sure that you can find the show. So make sure to find us on Facebook. It's at To Be Frank Show. And then online, you can find us tobefrankshow.com. And then, of course, on YouTube, The To Be Frank Show. And then, of course, all of your streaming platforms. You know, we're on Spotify, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeart, iTunes Radio, pretty much anywhere that you get your podcasts.
Well, good. Well, I'm happy to be here on Monday, Sarah. We had a full weekend of news and other things. You know, it was a poll that came out that was really disturbing. It wasn't Quinnipiac. It was another poll that had Biden's approval ratings just in the tank. But one of the things we really haven't talked much about is what are the vice president's approval ratings? They were 27% approval.
Wow.
And so, and I wish I knew the name, but the poll's out there.
Right.
But 27% approval rating. And I've asked the question so many times, you know, what is the vice president actually doing?
Yeah.
You know,
Where is she?
During this meltdown? Is she distancing herself from it, right? Mm-hmm. Did she distance herself from the border, right? Mm-hmm. Did that happen? Did she decide that it doesn't make political sense for her, but whatever she's done, whatever has happened, it's obviously hadn't worked.
Yep.
And I always sit back because I'm a little bit older. I've got a lot of experience. Who's advising, her?
Right.
Who's advising the vice president?
Yeah.
Right. Kamala Harris is not a not smart person. She's very smart. Mm-hmm. She's an uber politician. She is completely liberal. She was voted one of the most liberal members of the Senate every year she was there.
Wow.
So she has views about things that are very, very left wing oriented. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make her not smart. It doesn't make her anything other than that's the way that she prefers to run her politics.
Right.
But 27%, Sarah, that's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. And I'm curious if she is, that liberal. I wonder if her and the president are communicating. Some of the, I think he was mostly voted into presidency because he was probably a little more moderate. But a lot of the mandates that we're going to, get into, a lot of the stuff that's coming down has seemed, more left-wing, has seemed more extreme. Putting in a vax mandate, I mean, that does not feel moderate.
I don't think that there's very many things, Sarah, that he's done to, number one, unite the country.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm rooting for the president,
You're rooting for America.
I'm not an ideologue. I don't care about Republican or Democrat. I'm an independent. I have to say it every show. I'm rooting for the president, as everyone in the country should be. But I don't see anything that says moderate on it.
Right.
I don't.
I haven't seen it.
I don't. And, I'll leave the Kamala Harris thing with this. You wonder if the vice president is dealing with someone else other than Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. You wonder if her communication is really somewhere else, because there's been a lot of discussion about, is Joe Biden really making all of his own decisions?
Well, it seems no, because every time he gets up to the podium, he says, they told me to do this. They told me to ask these questions. So
yeah. Well, so, the president's approval rating, by the way, in this poll was 37 and change. So it's not good.
Yeah.
And, it's funny how, you just pick a side, right? The Democrats now, oh, Trump is a terrible guy. His approval ratings are bad. This is when they're low 40s. Now Biden's are in the high 30s, and their excuse is, well, it's hard to be president.
Right. Now it's difficult.
Yeah, it's hard to be president. So it just depends on what your political persuasion is.
And who you're reading.
Yes, but I'm getting ready in my Unplugged to blame everybody again because, and just as a kind of a foreshadowing to my Unplugged, they passed this $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that, quote unquote, is a bipartisan bill. 13 Republican congressional people in the House voted for this. The squad voted against it because they decided, okay, we're not going to vote for this because we need both bills coupled.
Right.
Remember that whole thing?
Yep, they wanted both bills passed together.
But 13 Republicans voted for this, and still to this hour, no one has told anybody how it's going to be paid for.
Right.
This BS on it pays for itself. The Congressional Budget Office has come out now and said that's not true, and I'm going to get into some of those details.
All right. Well,
so
we're
how about
interested.
well, let's go to live news and we'll get on with the show.
All right. All right, so our first story, we are talking about Democratic governor of Kansas, Laura Kelly, and how she's come out against Biden's vaccine mandate. So people from his own party are stepping out and saying that they don't agree with it. She has a quote that was released on Friday. She said, quote, "Yesterday I reviewed the new vaccine mandate from the Biden administration. While I appreciate the intent to keep people safe, a goal I share, I don't believe this directive is the correct or most effective solution for Kansas."
Right. And that is that's a big defection because now when Democratic governors, because not everybody on each side can agree on everything, but they vote the same way.
Right.
Right. Now, didn't I read somewhere, Sarah, you can correct me, 27 different states now have filed.
Yes. It was a few leading up to it. As of Friday, it was like an extra 26, so a total of 27 states.
All right, 27 states now have a problem with these mandates. And let's talk about what they have a problem with. They have a problem with the fact now, and the date here is a little different than the December 8th date, which is for government contractors. This is now January the 4th.
Yep.
Okay? So January the 4th, if you have over 100 employees, they either have to be vaccinated or they have to wear masks 100% of the time and they have to be tested every week.
Yep, weekly tests.
And the cost of that, ladies and gentlemen, is enormous.
Enormous, completely. I mean, and I think it's probably up to the companies whether people have to submit their own test or the company's going to pay for it. That probably just depends on each company. But that cost, whatever it is, whether it's out-of-pocket employee or the company, is just not something that's sustainable.
All right, so I'm a confirmed sports junkie. Okay, so I watch football games all weekend. You've got 50 to 100,000 people piled in the games. There's no masks, there's no anything, but we're not seeing any outbreak anymore. What does that tell you, Sarah?
To me, it tells me that a few things, right? So it either says, one, people have stopped getting tested because they don't want to get tested anymore. So, because a lot of people, might not have symptoms. It means two, it's not getting reported as much. Three, the vaccine is helping with either people not getting it or it's helping with people not getting as severe symptoms. So again, might not lead to more testing. They might not realize, they may think they have a little sniffle or a little cold. Or if people are starting to have their natural antibodies, if people have gotten it, they're starting to fight back against the virus.
All right, so there was this big discussion last year that the only way really, and this made some sense to me, the only way this is ever really going to go away is herd immunity.
Herd mentality.
All right, so herd immunity is when either you're vaccinated, you've already had it, you built up antibodies, and it just kind of doesn't become a gigantic problem anymore. I just don't see now with these stadiums full that we're seeing this this massive spike in the hospitals. I don't see that we're seeing this massive spike in the numbers. I know there was a hospital that reported in Florida that for the first time in 20 months, they didn't have one COVID case in their hospital. So I don't know what all this means. What I do know is when the government decides now that they're going to mandate, so this is the where the rubber hits the road. This is going to be a legal fight. And I'm telling you, no matter what side you want to look at, nobody can tell you exactly how this is going to come out. But I suggest that it may be found not to be constitutional. This may be unconstitutional, that the United States federal government goes into the states and mandates things into the states.
And what's interesting is they're using OSHA to issue the requirement. I know we can get into this kind of when we go into our double take, because this is one of our topics, but they're using OSHA to essentially say that it's a health crisis, and that's how they're trying to bypass the part that most are saying is unconstitutional.
Well, the latest polls say that the mandates are not popular with the American public.
No.
And this gets back to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the administration. Are they a one-term administration where they don't care about these numbers? Because they certainly act every time they do something.
Mm-hmm. It really seems that way.
So, all right. Well, we'll keep an eye on this. This is really going to be now, because we've talked to Sarah a little bit about, not to elongate the subject, but this needs to be mentioned, that the government contractors are on a little bit of a different glide slope. And where that comes into play is it comes into play with the airlines. And we've talked about that over and over and over. So that's in Pot A. Over here in Pot B is what we've just talked about.
Right.
Pot A is another mess waiting to happen.
Yep. And I've even heard it said that this could even go farther into smaller businesses as well. So we'll definitely be following this.
100 right now, though.
100 right now.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
All right, our next story, we are taking a look at Republicans looking for an advantage in the 2022 race, as Democrats, a lot of them are actually opting for retirement. About a dozen have already talked about wanting to retire.
12.
Yeah. Yep.
12
in the House.
Yeah, in the House of Representatives. Now, for everybody that pays attention or doesn't, the House of Representatives has 435, I want to say, members, okay? There is a very, very small majority, 5 or 6 seat majority for the Democrats now.
Right.
12 are now being, I guess it's becoming newsworthy now that they have announced that they're either going to seek retirement or other
run for a different office.
So in other words, we're bailing out of the Congress.
Yeah, we're out of it.
We're going to go run for something else.
Yep.
You know, I am really upset with the House of Representatives. 13 Republican House members crossed the line on the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. And they crossed over and allowed for AOC and Ilhan Omar and Cori Bush and these people not to vote for this bill and go against their party. No one can tell you, Sarah, how they're going to pay for this.
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
Nobody. And $29 trillion and counting, $1 trillion to $2 trillion in annual deficits. Annual deficits. Nobody can tell you how they're going to pay for it.
I'm so interested to, listen to your Unplugged as you kind of take a deep dive into that, because I feel like every time that the infrastructure bill comes up, Republicans are saying, well, look how low we got it. But as you've mentioned before, just because you got it lower does not mean you're still not adding to the deficit.
And Sarah's point is that President Biden in March decided he wanted $2.25 trillion. They went to $1.2 trillion, but that's still unpayable money.
Yep.
Now, are they just going to raise taxes across the board? He said that no one under $400,000,
a family under $400,000
is going to pay additional tax. Well, we'll see. But just remember my point the last 3 or 4 shows, Sarah, and you can speak to this. I've lived long enough where every single time that they tell the American public this is paid for, it's not. Because in 1992, we had a $4 trillion deficit during the days of Ross Perot running for president as an independent, which I was involved with. Those days are over because now it's $29 trillion. But for all those years, Sarah, for 29 years we've been told, well, this is paid for.
Clearly not.
It's not paid for.
Not if it's been run up that high.
So, again, we're going to cover this in the Unplugged section, but this is the gravest danger that's facing our country. And now they want to spend another $1.75 trillion on now social programs.
For the social spending bill, yep. And you know what's interesting? I saw in an NBC story, and I'm not picking on NBC, I think every station does a story differently, it has their merits, but I saw in an NBC story that they called it a $555 billion infrastructure bill. And then I read on in the story because I was like, this is not what all of the other stations are reporting. This is not what all of the other outlets are reporting. So I read on, and they said, well, it tends to amount to higher because of XYZ, but if you look at just one piece, it's $555 billion. But what's interesting is that $555 billion was at the top of the story. And if you didn't understand to read on, or you hadn't read other articles, you think, okay, what are they talking about 1.2 trillion? That's not that much. 555 billion. Sure, that lines up with, high taxes for corporations. That adds up for, taxing the rich. We could cover that. Well, needless to say, do your homework. Read across the board. Listen to our show. Listen to Frank when he goes into all of the depth when it comes to what our country is actually spending on.
Yeah, and again, we're going to cover this in detail here in the Unplugged, but to kind of close this section out, Congress, if this is a bipartisan piece of legislation, then it's incumbent upon the Republicans just as much as the Democrats now to tell us how they're going to pay for it.
Right.
I just want one reporter, one time, to take a microphone, stick it in somebody's face, and say, how specifically are you going to pay for this? You voted for this.
Right.
How are you going to pay for this?
Yeah.
Can't answer it.
I've seen actually, and just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, I've seen a big sweep on social media from people who are on the conservative side saying, call your representative, call your House representative. If they voted for this bill, call them, ask them how it's going to be paid for exactly, and vote them out. So it's interesting that you say that. Hopefully the people will ask, and hopefully the people will want to find out and pressure outlets or pressure their people that they're voting for to ask these questions.
Right.
So we'll see.
Okay.
All right, our next story. So speaking of vice presidents and speaking of the House, Pence predicts that the GOP is going to take back the White House in 2024. So there's been a lot of speculation whether or not former President Trump will run again.
He's running.
He has yet to claim it. But
you know why? Because
no, the
election finance laws don't allow him to do what he wants to do and announce that he's running until probably after the midterms.
Interesting.
This is election finance stuff.
Okay. So he's been saying he's been, in my mind, campaigning, going to all these states, and been saying you're going to be really happy. You're going to be really happy with what's going to be announced.
For what you're going to hear from me, I'd be really happy if he announced he's not running. But and that's not an anti-Trump scenario. It's what I'm getting ready to get into. So let me take the lead on this.
Yep.
So Mike Pence, I think, for all indications, was a very good vice president. He did what a vice president does. He adheres to the president. He's at the service of the president. He did what I thought was a good job every day on being the task force leader of the COVID mess when we got into this in January and March of last year. He held press conferences almost every day.
He was vocal enough.
He did a lot. In comparison now to the vice president today, who looks like she is MIA. So there's two different things here. But Pence basically said that the Republican is going to win the 2024 presidential election. Okay, that's something good that you say. Is Pence the guy? Is he really now setting himself up to be the guy? Well, I think that's really something that became very interesting to me. Pence mentioned in his speech that America is a country in crisis under Biden. I have a tendency to believe that. We are a country under crisis right now. Every single aspect, and they make up more problems as they go instead of diffusing. When I say diffuse, Just don't create more new stuff. It came out over the weekend that a Biden administration person basically said, don't be surprised to see gas at $4 a gallon by early next year. This hits the pocketbook of every American. You know, for people like me, I hate it, but it doesn't cause me the problem that it causes a young family of four that's on a month-to-month budget that ultimately now goes and gasses up, and it's $30 extra a week. So that's $120 a month. That's money that's coming out of their need, not their want.
Right.
And that's a real problem for me, Sarah.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I could go off about oil. I know we've talked about it before. We went from being energy dependent to dependent on OPEC and shutting down all of these things that's driving that up. So exactly what you're saying, he's shooting himself in the foot. And I mean, do you think Pence would run for president?
Here's what I'm going to tell you. Trump, if he really loved this country, knowing how polarizing he is, remember what I mentioned to you last show? Hillary Clinton's biggest problem was people loved her or they hated her. When you're in politics, Sarah, it's not even the likable factor, it's the unlikable factor. Because you can vote for somebody you're not completely in love with, but if you hate them, you're not voting for him.
Yeah.
Well, Trump has as high a dislike factor. You can use a million words, but it's dislike of anybody. So will his ego allow for him to step aside? Well, here are some suggestions. I'm going to give you my top 4 for 2024.
Okay.
And we can discuss these. So let me give them to you and then we can discuss them.
Okay.
The election is November 5th, 2024. Okay? Number 1 on my list is Chris Christie, who is the former governor of New Jersey. You're a New Jersey person.
Yes, and I have to say, I was in a march for him when I lived back in New Jersey when he was first running. Yeah,
well, we'll have to call him and tell him that. We'll
yeah.
We'll let him know that. So Chris Christie, the former governor who was very close to Trump and was on his transition team, but then got sideways with Trump's son-in-law, and then he just kind of went off the map. But he does now seem to me to be positioning himself. Number 2, a favorite of mine, Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas. He is one of the most stable, I think, normal, if that word's a word, right, in Washington.
Yeah.
He's sensible. He's smart. I really like him. Tom Cotton. The third is our senator here, Ted Cruz. You got to assume Cruz is going to make another run, okay? He went down to the wire with Trump. Trump obviously, won the nomination on the Republican side in 2019, I believe.
Yep.
And Ted Cruz is definitely going to have his name in the hat. And then what I think is a favorite amongst the majority of people right now as a non-Trump guy is Ron DeSantis out of Florida.
Okay, so I was hoping you would say him because, to be honest, he's probably my favorite. I think...
All right, why is he your favorite?
Because I have loved how he's handled the entire situation in Florida. He hasn't bowed down to people who say he's too this or too that, but he's so eloquent with when he speaks.
Does Chris Christie know you're cheating on him?
I know. I love Chris Christie. I mean, I just think he handled things so well. I mean, when Hurricane Sandy hit, he was just speaking out, to the whole community.
When Hurricane Sandy hit, he was on the beach with his family after he closed the beach.
Okay, but he was.
Wait, that's true, right?
But he was walking around trying to say hello to
walking
people.
Around. I saw him with a cigar in his mouth in a lounge chair.
Okay, I didn't see that exact photo.
All right, I'm making it up.
I was going to say, I was like, I missed that photo. But, I think he handled it really well. He met with the president, even though they don't agree on things. Like, he was talking about aid, and I think that he handled the whole situation really well. And this is near and dear to my heart. I was caught in Sandy out on Coney Island in New York. I was working for New York One at the time, and it was a complete disaster, a complete mess out there. I loved how he handled it, and I loved how he had implemented a lot of policies in New Jersey. But I think Ron DeSantis right now has the perfect mix of exactly what you're saying. He's likable. I think how he handled COVID and the numbers that we're seeing in Florida, I think that people are realizing that is someone who you can get behind because of their policies, because he does what he says he's going to do. And I just also love his family. His wife is I think Ron DeSantis
I'm going to
is
make
great.
a couple of points here. Then I'm going to ask Sarah a very serious question.
Okay.
Chris Christie of Tom Cotton, Ted Cruz, and Ron DeSantis is the most centric of all of them. Okay? He's probably more in the center, more Clinton-like, if there is such a thing, than the three other guys. Cruz, for sure, is way right.
Yeah.
And so, for my money, I think the only way to solve the country's problems is to solve them right here. So I say that. But you believe, I believe you believe. How about that one?
Okay.
I believe you believe
Okay.
that Trump's going to run again. Is that a fair statement?
Fair.
Okay. Do you think there's going to be an unbelievable fight inside the party now because you've got so many forever Trumpers, and he's going to call upon that base. Not enough for him to win, okay? The only way that I can see today with Joe Biden and what's going on, the only way the Republicans don't get the White House back is some natural disaster that we don't see right now, or Donald Trump becoming the nominee. I don't believe Trump can ever win again.
Unfortunately, I would agree with that. I think that the Republicans need to take back the White House because of the swing that's happened right now with President Biden. Now, I believe that exactly what we've talked about before. I believe that, a Democratic president can do great things as well. I just think, unfortunately, this president is not.
This one is
abysmal.
No, he's not doing a good job.
Not doing a good job.
You got to say it.
Yeah, but I definitely agree that I think Trump is probably too polarizing for people. You can't get at most people in the middle. You're not going to get to jump on his team. So along the lines of what you're saying, will Trump mess with the Republican Party and split it too much? I think so. I think the primaries are going to be very interesting if he's coming out of Christie, if he's coming out of Ron DeSantis. I think those initial debates will be very telling, and I hope that the GOP puts someone in front who they really feel like the country can rally around, because that's the only way that they're going to take back the House.
But I'm not a gigantic Donald Trump guy, anybody who watches the show, but I think he did a lot of great things as president. He did a lot of good things
I agree.
that he never got credit for. That's number one. Number two, I agree with your assessment. He's not going to go down easy. He's not going to go down easy. And I think that this is going to be an ugly process.
I think it's going to be very ugly.
And that's not good, again, for the Republican Party. Now, forget the country for a moment.
Yeah.
And I think that there are the stewards inside the Republican Party that can't talk about this publicly, but privately are concerned about this.
I think so, because one of the biggest issues that the Democrats have right now is their extreme sides. So we've talked about the quad and just the extreme sides that people are seeing right now. If the former president does run, if Trump does run, then I think we're going to also see, again, another divide that we cannot afford, that the Republicans cannot afford if they want the House back.
Yeah. All right. Well,
we'll see.
This one's going to be wow.
Yeah.
This is going to be wow.
Yeah. Well,
All
so
right.
wait, according to the finance laws, when can he announce?
I'm going to say he's going to announce. I don't know the specifics to the finance law. I know that's an impediment.
Right.
I think it's going to be right after the midterms.
Okay.
And what's going to happen is that the Republicans take what I think they're going to take in the midterms based on the performance of the Biden administration. That's going to be a big platform he's going to try to jump on.
All right. Then we'll find out. So this next story, Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, is cold calling senators in Congress using her royal title. That's how she's introducing herself, and she's talking about the paid leave policy.
Was I nice to her the other show?
I thought you were.
Okay, I'm not nice to her today.
Okay.
I don't like this at all.
Okay, I'm gonna let you.
No, I don't like it at all. First of all, Kristen Gillibrand from New York is one of the most liberal, crazy people that is in the Senate. Okay? All you have to do is listen to her for 5 minutes. It's a problem.
I've interviewed her a few times when I was back in New York, and she is, some of the stuff that comes out of her mouth, we couldn't even air.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know how New York could have a Schumer and a Kristen
Gillibrand,
Gillibrand. Okay, here's the problem, okay? The problem is this, is Meghan Markle needs to really be careful about how she approaches things based on all the controversy that she created. What I did last show or the show before is I stuck up for her, feeling bad for Prince Harry and feeling like that she rescued Prince Harry from something he wanted to get the hell out of.
Right, wanted to get out of the royal family and being in that public aspect of things.
The senator from New York gave personal cell phone information out. This is what it looks like, and I'm going to read you. I'm going to read you a quote.
Gillibrand admitted it.
Yeah, can I read a quote?
Yeah.
Senator Shelley Moore Capito, the other representative other than Manchin from West Virginia. This is how Meghan Markle started the conversation. This is Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. And these people are like, what are you calling me for?
Yeah.
You know, okay, it's good talking to you. How you doing?
Right.
Why are you calling me?
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting. Like you said, you know, last time you were really nice to her. You kind of backed her, but she says that she doesn't want this world and doesn't want this title, it seems like, and then suddenly she's using it to try to, you know, push forward for paid family leave. Basically, Meghan, in a quote, said, she's not an elected official and I'm not a politician. I am, like many, an engaged citizen and a parent, and because you and your congressional colleagues have a role in shaping family outcomes for generations to come, that's why I'm writing to you in this deeply important time as a mom to advocate for paid leave.
I'm up for it. How are you going to pay for it, Meghan?
Yeah.
That's all I want to know. I'm all for all this.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to help everybody.
Yep.
How are you going to pay for it?
Well, and you know what? It's interesting. As I was reading this and as I was listening, last time we talked about Pelosi throwing it back into the social spending bill, I was thinking in my head, you know, as a mom, you know, there's a federal mandate. Basically, you get 6 weeks off and your job has to still be there, but it doesn't mean you get paid. And, you know, you can take disability and et cetera. I think it even might be 8 weeks federally. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But basically, it's up to your company a lot of times whether or not you get paid for that amount of time, whether or not you have to come back after that amount of time. And as a new mom, it's anyone can tell you this. It's a struggle coming back into kind of real life. And it's, in my mind, I'm like, paid family leave. I can't imagine having 3 months paid to just recover physically, to recover with my child, to recover mentally, to learn this new system, especially as a first-time mom. And then in my head, I was thinking, this would be wonderful if this was something federally that was paid for. You had 3 months where you could literally just focus on your family, which is wonderful. Then the logical and I guess more, you know, fiscally conservative side of me was saying, thinking about your last Unplugged, how are we going to pay for this?
Well, the country's broke.
Right.
So let's give everybody a year.
Right.
Let's give them 2 years.
That'd be great.
Okay? Let's give them all you want.
Yeah.
You can't pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. I mean, Sarah, in your own life, you make choices.
Yep.
Okay? People make choices. I want a new TV. I don't want a new TV. I'm going to get a new car. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You have to be able to afford it. We're broke. Our country is broke. We borrow all the money. We print money. I'm going to get into it again. We don't have any money. So when these so-called celebrities now show up, and this is great for mankind, of course it is.
Right.
How are you going to pay for it, Meghan?
Yeah.
How are you paying for it?
Yep.
I rest my case.
I could not agree more. All right, so our next story, and this is a Frank, I'm very interested to kind of hear your thoughts on this. As you know, you've been in the sports world, business world, you kind of know the NBA obviously really well. Robert Sarver, owner of the NBA Phoenix Suns, is under investigation basically for the allegations are that he used racist and sexist language for years.
Yeah. Robert Sarver, for those of you that don't know who he is, he's the owner of the Phoenix Suns, and he's the owner of, I believe, the Phoenix Mercury, which is the WNBA team. I don't pay too much attention to that, but he owns both an NBA and WNBA team. The league, the NBA now, is so concerned about this, they hired a top-flight, high-profile law firm to investigate Sarver and his organization. The allegations is that he used, as you mentioned, racist and sexist language for years. NBA spokesman Mike Bass, who's a pretty straight guy, called the allegations extremely serious. Now, former coach Earl Watson, who is an African American, says that Sarver repeatedly used the N-word, okay? He used it in meetings, he used it privately. There's some anecdotes about how he used it that I don't have enough time in the show to basically get into it. What I do know is I do know the NBA. And he's not a very well-liked guy in the NBA. He's kind of an arrogant guy, okay? The eye test is everything for me again. When you look at this guy, he's one of the most disliked people. People just don't like being around him. But here is the worst quote of it all. And I really want you as a woman to speak to this because you're a former athlete.
Yeah.
ESPN reports in this report that Sarver allegedly said to a female employee, "Do I own you? Are you one of mine?" You got to be a little nuts now. You know, I mean, what world are you living in, Robert Sarver? Do I own you? And are you one of mine? And you got to remember, people that are involved with the NBA and big sports people, maybe not the vast majority of everybody. You remember the Los Angeles Clipper mess, okay? That guy got paid $2 billion to go away, all right? $2 billion he sold the franchise for. But he was talking about how, oh, I'm buying you this house and I'm buying you these cars and everybody should be happy with me. Almost under the context, do I own you? Now, I don't know the race of this particular female employee.
Right.
But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if she's black, white, or green. Do I own you? Are you one of mine? Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, so this is kind of twofold, right? So a part of me, as an athlete, you know, having had tons of coaches throughout my life and having had relatively good relationships with coaches, and I know a lot joke around and, you know, have that good old boy kind of mentality. If I had a good relationship with him or knew that he was a good-hearted guy and he said that, I wouldn't be as offended. But knowing who he is and
let me interrupt you. Not one legitimate person that I've ever been around's ever talked like that.
Right.
Ever.
I'm trying to think if it was said to me, I'd probably be pretty offended and annoyed that you didn't know.
Would you say something?
Oh, I mean, I probably would. I was a sassy athlete. I probably would have said something like.
Would the statement start with the F word?
I don't know that the F word would have come out of my mouth, considering he was the owner of the company.
I think that's terrible.
I mean, again,
do I own you?
I'm trying to think if. On any way would this not offend me?
I don't think that there's any way that, you know, I have a daughter, I've got a wife, you know, I've got granddaughters. If someone talked to them like that, well, if you talk to my daughter like that, you get hit with a chair. But I mean, that's really, really unbelievable.
It's really disrespectful. It's really rude. And I think it's archaic. I think that's probably one of the biggest things is that you can't speak to people that way.
How about this?
Anymore.
I'm going to disagree with that as well. The archaic side would be, hey, honey, can you get me a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
All right? That would be the archaic side.
Do I own?
That doesn't fly, okay? I'm not doing that. It doesn't fly. Has it happened years and years ago with people that I know that are way older than me? Hey, honey, can you get me a cup of coffee? That's the archaic side.
Yeah.
When you get into, do I own you?
Meaning,
do you know,
like, was she a player on his team?
It doesn't matter. Do I own you? Are you one of mine? One of your what? I think this story is terrible.
Yeah.
I think it's going to blow up. I think it should blow up. I think the NBA is doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you, this is going to affect the team.
Yeah.
Because racist comments, the N-word, this and that, you know, It's just not gonna work.
Yeah. Well, and there's other. I was looking at some of the ESPN interviews they did. They interviewed more than 70 people for the story. Basically, everyone talking about how terrible he was, a hostile work environment, inappropriate language.
So that takes away that he's a good guy.
Oh yeah.
So that's my point. You said if he was a good guy.
But
he's
I'm
not
saying,
a good guy.
like, if I was pretending he was a good guy and he was joking around with me or something, said something like that, that might be one thing. But this, I mean, knowing his story, knowing how he acts, I mean, I would probably say something like, well, with that kind of comment, you know, you can get the out of here.
Yeah. Well, he's going to have to answer for all this.
Yeah.
So we're going to see how that goes. But I mean, this is the misogynistic, this is the just whole shooting match where some of these older guys haven't gotten the memo.
You know what, and I'm just thinking back on this, you know what I'd be most offended about if he said that to me? That he didn't know I was a player on his team.
He might have known it was, I don't know exactly who the female employee was. They didn't stipulate in the articles that I wrote.
Who she was.
Whether it was a staff person, whether it was a player. But to me, again, it doesn't matter. I mean, I was not brought up that way. I mean, that's just pretty bad.
Yep.
You know, hey, honey, get me a cup of coffee. That was 30 years ago. Probably got away with it then. Can't get away with it now. That is the side that, okay, you know, you shouldn't talk like that, and you don't talk to people like that. You shouldn't talk to women like that. But this is outrageous.
I'd be pretty ticked off.
All right. Well, let's go to our next segment, which is Double Take.
So there is a new pill that's about to come out. Last week we talked about the Merck pill. Now Pfizer's come out with a pill saying that they cut the chance of hospitalizations or deaths in adults from COVID-19 by 89%.
I hate this pill.
Okay, tell me about it.
The reason is you got to take 3 in the morning and 3 at night for 5 days. Mm-hmm. I mean, I take enough vitamins.
Right.
All right, just give me a shot. I walk in, it's 2 minutes, I leave.
But do you think it's a decent alternative to the vaccine?
I don't know. I mean, that's yet to be determined, but
Right.
You got to take 3 pills, 6 pills a day for 5 days. That's 30 pills you got to take. Yeah. My suggestion is close your eyes, hold your breath, let them put a needle in your arm. I mean, this is, you know, I mean, why don't you just take the whole bottle and drink the whole bottle?
Okay, see, this is where... It's a funny.
No, but why? No, I'm serious.
But to me, this is a little bit of a different. I see it a little bit differently. This is obviously more of a treatment measure rather than preventative. But people who have issues with the vaccine.
Now wait a minute. Treatment. What does that mean?
Treatment
so you
if
get diagnosed
COVID.
as COVID. So this isn't a preventative for COVID.
No, not a preventative for COVID.
Okay. Well, I still think it's a bad idea.
Yeah. And they say basically in the trials they were given it basically 3 days after they started to have symptoms.
So is this like a Z-Pack? Is this the equivalent of a Z-Pack?
What it technically is, it's a blocker for the enzyme that the virus needs to multiply.
So you get COVID, you take this whole jar of pills in 5 days, and then you feel better.
Supposedly.
So it's like a Z-Pack.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still don't like it, but that's okay. You would do this.
I mean, I'm not saying whether I would or not because I don't want to disclose whether or not I have the vaccine. I think that's my business and my business only. But as an alternative, I think it's a good option.
All right. Well, we're going to get into vaccine or no vaccine with Aaron Rodgers.
All right, let's do it.
He got himself in a lot of trouble.
Yes, he did.
You know why? Because he lied, but we'll get to that in a minute.
I mean, did he lie or did he just,
no, he lied. All right, so you're for the pill, I don't like the pill.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say on the pill?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right, next subject.
All right, Aaron Rodgers was dropped by Prevea Health. I hope I'm saying that right, Prevea Health.
Whoever they are, they dropped him.
They dropped him over the fact that he's not getting the vaccine. So they ended their partnership with him after he defended his decision not to get
All right, we're going to disagree on this one too.
Okay.
So he went on the Pat McAfee show, all right, which is some big show, I guess, somewhere. I don't listen to it. And he says he conducted his own research, okay? I'm using the exact words he used on the vax. He conducted his own research. Then he said he spoke to Now, Dr. Joe Rogan. Did you know that Rogan now is a virologist now?
I didn't know.
I think he just went over the weekend and got his certificate, okay? Because now he's advising people about things, okay? No, he talked to Dr. Joe Rogan, who I like, but I mean, come on, we're getting a little goofy here. Rodgers was not honest, in my opinion. That's why we have two of us here. When he was asked, was he vaxxed? And let me give you his answer.
Okay.
Asked on August 26th. Now you make up your minds on this one. If he was vaccinated or not. And he told reporters, yeah, I've been immunized. Let me repeat again. Have you been vaccinated? Yeah, Y-E-A-H. I've been immunized. Whatever the hell that means, I have no idea. There's guys on the team, more the quote, that haven't been vaxxed. I think it's a personal decision. I'm not going to judge those guys. See, that's a killer line right there for me, because I'm not going to judge them if they're vaccinated or not. Well, you just lied about your vaccination.
To me, the yeah is damning. But at the same time, I've been immunized. People say that if they've already had COVID and have the antibodies.
Okay. They didn't ask him that.
They ask, are you vaccinated?
Yeah, they didn't ask him that.
Specifically. So
then he says he's a critical thinker.
I mean,
no, he's a critical thinker.
But I understand.
The hell is that? What's a critical thinker?
Obviously, you shouldn't lie. Obviously, him saying yeah is not right. But I also think that him saying immunized is not a lie. That he's immunized. That's what people say when they have
okay, so then
antibodies.
Should the reporters then, with a guy as slippery as this, when they go to the press conference, I'm asking, should they bring the lie detector thing and tie it up to his...
No, if they said is that the exact verbiage
exact quote.
No, not of him. Is that the exact verbiage of the reporter question?
I took it right out of 7 articles.
Okay, so if they ask specifically, are you vaccinated, then the saying yeah is a lie. But saying that he's been immunized, I don't think it...
and he's a critical thinker? What the hell's that? And then here's where now you can comment on this, because I know this gets a little under your skin. He then decides that he's going to blame it on the people that are for woke culture, that the Democrats are going to hate me. Now he turns it into this big political mess, which is the 17th dumbest thing that he did. Anybody knows me, I think Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks of my lifetime. What a nut job.
Oh, see, I don't see it like that, because he even said himself, so I have another quote here. He even said, I'm not an anti-vax flat earther.
What's a flat earther?
Basically someone who doesn't think the world is round, and he's not a conspiracy theorist. He's not an anti-vaxxer. I don't think that you can call someone who doesn't want the COVID vaccine an anti-vaxxer, but that's what he's saying himself. I'm not an anti-vax flat earther. I have an allergy to an ingredient that's in the mRNA vaccines, and I found a long-term immunization protocol to protect
Dr.
myself.
Joe Rogan?
And I'm very proud of the research that went into that.
Dr. Joe Rogan?
But I know he did discuss it with Dr. Joe Rogan, but in this article, he talked about that he's done his own research.
He's not a doctor, okay? I'm making a big joke.
Yeah, he's joking. And
he's a doctor.
He's not claiming that Joe thinks he's a doctor either, but or that he is a doctor, a virologist, or whatever he said.
It'd be like people walking into my office over here, and the next thing you know, I'm giving them medical advice, I'm writing them out, well, get this.
Well, I think their conversation, and I don't know that we have time to really get into this, the ivermectin, so I think the conversation, that's where that came around when he was talking with Joe Rogan about it, as a treatment, and again, I don't really want to get into the ivermectin conversation.
Are you for or against the healthcare company dropping it?
I mean, that's their decision.
They did it for a reason.
Yeah, I was going to say...
I just named 7 reasons why they did it.
I mean, that's their right as someone who sponsors a company. If they don't feel like the person who's at the front of their company represents what they believe, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I also don't have a problem with Aaron Rodgers not wanting the vaccine.
All right, try this out, though. Aaron, have you been vaccinated? No, I haven't been vaccinated. I've been immunized. Oh, really? What's immunization? Then he could talk about it.
Right.
But do you understand? He got around all the protocols of the NFL and his team, and then he cost his team a win yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely messed up there. But I
I'm upset with the guy, as you can see.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in terms of his talent, but that is just a crock.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Our next story. Okay, so this is what we kind of chatted about earlier. 26 states filed lawsuits over business vax mandate as of Friday. 27 states total.
All right, you take this one.
All right, so 27 states total filed lawsuits against Biden's vaccine requirements for private companies. So we've talked about this as of January 4th. Companies who have 100 people or more. Basically, Thursday, OSHA had issued the requirement saying businesses with more than 100 people must be vaccinated by January 4th, or they have to have a face mask requirement and weekly tests. But the Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, who filed 11 of these state lawsuits, is saying that the mandate is unconstitutional, unlawful, unwise. The federal government says that they're going to fight the battle. They're completely ready, and penalties could include $14,000 per violation.
So you're as against this as anybody?
As anybody. I mean, I think this is completely ridiculous. It's a private company. I mean, this is America. The last time I checked, this is completely out of league. This is completely unconstitutional. I get that they're trying to make the world a better place and make it safer, healthier, and trying to help people. But I don't think by mandating a vaccine that's only been around for a year.
Is this the Biden administration overreaching and
Yes.
creating their own problems?
Yes,
Okay.
110%.
Okay. Is this something that you think will be fought until the last day?
Tooth and nail. Yes, because I think that companies are not going to want to front that cost of people who don't want to get the vaccine. I think that employees are not going to bend. I think when it comes to, obviously we talked about city workers, fire, all of the people who are employed by the actual state and counties. I mean, obviously those situations are completely out of hand too, because those are the people who are saving people in their community. But I think small businesses, and I think 100 people with 100 people or more, 100 people could be considered a small business. It could be.
Well, that's not a small business.
I mean,
that's
not
a pretty
super
good
small.
size. That's a pretty decent size business.
Sure, but it's not a Schlumberger 35,000 people.
Yeah, but I would tell you 100 employees is a reasonable amount of employees. That's probably a multi-million-dollar company.
But it's still someone where it's small enough that you probably know everyone in the company.
I would say that's probably right. That's a very good point.
And it's still, the person who might have to leave the job, and the person who, I think the people up top probably have a relationship with most of the people in the company, and I think that those more heartfelt companies are going to have a problem making these mandates for people.
All right, here's my question to you. This is the last piece of this. So we have the private side over here. We have the government contractor side over here. We've talked till we're blue in the face on the government contracting side. So give me your prediction there. What's going to happen?
I think this is going to be completely tied up in lawsuits, and I think the date is going to be continually pushed back until I think that eventually people are just going to say,
so
no, we're not doing it. Are you talking about federally? Or
no, I'm talking about now the airlines.
The airlines.
So government contractor, non-government contractor, June or January 4th. Government contractor, December 8th. Okay, my question to you is about the government contracting side. What are they going to do? What's your prediction?
My prediction is the government contracts are going to be voided, because American has stood up and said, we are not requiring our employees, or there's going to be an amendment.
Okay, but now you're going to void it, and 1 month later you're going to be forced on the non-government contracting side on January the 4th.
You
see how screwed up this is?
It's completely screwed up. It's completely messed up. And again, they're shooting themselves in the foot. Exactly what we've been saying all along. The Biden administration is making more issues for themselves. I think it's just going to cause complete chaos, and I'm very interested to see what happens.
We're gonna follow it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, time for your Unplugged.
Okay, so since our last show, the Congress of the United States, the House of Representatives, and the Senate months and months ago, and the House of Representatives just, I believe on Saturday, whenever it was, passed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. Now, I can't get to the real numbers here yet. Okay, I can't. I've looked at every article known to man. I get the $550 billion that Sarah brought up. That's kind of the advertised number in terms of the amount of money that's actually going into infrastructure. But I can't get to this $1.2 trillion number. And about 4 shows ago, I did a piece on this. And I broke it down, and I think I got the 700 and change. But I can't get to the $1.2 trillion. But here's really what I can't get to. Here's the point of the whole Unplugged. Not one person has told anybody that voted for this in either the Senate or in the House how they're going to pay for this thing. Okay? Let me repeat now the repeatable every time I get into this. This year, we're sitting on $29 trillion of national debt and deficits, which means that we're spending more than what we take in for 2021 of about $1.2 trillion additionally, okay? That's going to add to the deficit year after year after year. I've proclaimed on this show that the United States government is broke, and they are. What I'm asking for now is for somebody to tell us 3 things. The first thing I want somebody to tell us is on this $1.2 billion, and I want them to be specific. Talk to us like we're educated people, okay, the American public. How am I specifically going to pay for this as a taxpayer? What are you specifically going to do? And no one has done that. Oh, it's paid for and we've already got it paid for. That's a crock of BS, okay? It's not paid for. The CBO has said that at a minimum it's $300 to $350 billion added to the deficit over 10 years. That's the Congressional Budget Office. It's not me. But I just want somebody to tell me, how are you going to pay for this? Number 2, I need somebody to tell the American public, okay, which I'm part of, Sarah's part of, how are you going to pay for this ridiculous, and it's ridiculous, $1.75 trillion social spending bill? How specifically are you going to pay for it? You've already said you're going to tax corporations. We don't know how much money that is. You're going to take all the billionaires' money, and if they gave it to y'all, you couldn't pay for this, okay? How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for these things? These are questions that I think we need to be able to talk to our children and our grandchildren about. I think this is common sense. I've said all along, the government is broke. And how do you get broke is when you can't pay your bills. The only way we pay our bills is we borrow more money from the Treasury that prints more money. It's the only way we pay our bills. We don't pay our bills by money in, money out the way that you and your families pay your bills, okay? And somebody owes us an explanation. So why is the Congress, why is the presidency, why are our politicians in Washington hiding the truth from the American people? Now, I could lay this on Joe Biden's lap. You only can lay a piece of it. This is Donald Trump. This is Barack Obama. This is George W. Bush, one of the greatest guys of all time. This is this is George Herbert Walker Bush. And then you got, Bill Clinton in there, who's the only guy, which I bring up every show, that for a year or two not only balanced the budget for that year, he didn't get rid of the problem, for that year he balanced the budget, and he created a bit of a surplus, something we haven't seen in 25 years, okay? So why can't the politicians in Washington, why can't they be honest with us? Why can't they just tell us, okay, we got $29 trillion, it's climbing between $1 trillion and $2 trillion every single year, so just do your math. It can't be paid back, it's impossible. So Social Security and Medicare from my last Unplugged is also underfunded, and that is a gigantic problem into the $100 trillions of dollars, I went through that in the Unplugged, so watch the Unplugged from last show, and I get into the specifics about those social programs. Here we are now trying to pass another social bill we can't pay for. So what are we going to do? Well, I come out of the real estate business and real estate development business where you deal with bankruptcies and you deal with banks and you deal with all kinds of stuff. I've done it for a lot of my career. There's like 3 ways that you could do this. Number one, you could default on the debt. That's what happens in some of these real estate projects that get overbuilt. You default on the debt, the bank takes it back, and then they sell it to another buyer for some amount of money less than the face value of the loan. That's kind of step number one. Is that what's going to happen here? Is 29 trillion going to be written down to 10 trillion? Okay? That's easy. Math is clear. Number two, if you decide you're not going to do that, are you going to just write it down? Are we just going to stiff, X amount of people, right? Because these treasury bonds and these bonds are bought, okay? We mostly own most of our own debt, the taxpayer. So are we just going to wipe it out? I mean, is that what the game plan is that nobody wants to tell us? Are they just going to, take a pen and just go through it and say, well, we don't owe this money anymore? And, at that point, the economy gets blown up, the world economy gets blown up. I mean, all kinds of bad things. Okay, interest rates go through the roof. Or are you just going to default? And I think I mentioned that, but the bankruptcy thing is not necessarily default, it's a write-down. Are you just going to default on the money? We're just not going to pay it back, guys, So which one of those analyses is what somebody in Washington at least has got to have some game plan for? Because you can't pay it back. All you're doing is adding to this tremendous debt. Again, in your own household, it's like you your family bringing in $10,000 to $15,000 a month, and you're spending $25,000 to $30,000 a month, and your brother-in-law works at Bank of America, and he keeps loaning you money because he's your brother-in-law. It's the only other way that this is what it is. But I just wish that somebody would be honest with the American people. I think that I could live with that, okay? We've made a lot of mistakes. The problem is the people in Congress that have okayed all this, they don't have the answers for this, and if they do, why aren't they telling us? And shame on the media. I get back to the same thing. I would love the day that they gave me a press pass and they let me interview somebody that voted for this crap and just say, what are you going to do now? No, I think the reporters, they're just afraid to even ask it because it is the crazy aunt in the cellar that the neighbors know is there, but they don't say anything about it. So Sarah, we're living in incredible times here. The country's broke, and it's really hard for me to do these segments because I know this is real.
Yeah.
And, for someone like you who is a good, upstanding American and you play by the rules, wouldn't you and your family like to know, what are you going to do about this? Isn't that something that everyone would want to know?
Well, I think especially kind of at the beginning there when you were talking about, what this means for your kids, your grandkids, now, especially being a mom, I start thinking a little more long term, and I keep thinking it's just going to keep going up, and that scares me. That makes me scared that one of those 4 things that you talked about is going to happen, and their world, their economy is going to go to crap.
All right, as a reporter, put your reporter hat on. Why is no one asking the hard questions? Are they being told not to?
I think, well, first off, obviously, Biden's not going to answer the hard questions. Let's have that over there.
Well, how about Janet Yellen, or how about Jerome Powell? How about we put it in front of somebody's face that at least is capable cognitively of answering this?
Because I think reporters are trained to take what the interviewee says at face value. Oh, okay, well, it's just going to be taken from the rich. Okay, there it is. There you have it. And they don't
you could take all the money and you can't pay for this.
Well, that's what I mean. They don't really break down, and they're not looking at the analysis. And their 1-minute story or their 500-word article, they don't have enough to actually truly break it down like you're doing. And I think that people are I don't want to say too lazy.
They don't have the time on these network shows because they jump from one talking head to the next. You got 2-minute, 3-minute segments. Nobody wants to break this down. Number one, they don't know about it.
Yep.
And I would say this, okay, around the country, around the world, people around the world watch this show. Anybody who wants to come on the show and debate this with me, you're welcome. All you got to do is let us know. You'll be on the next show. Just be prepared to be running off the stage in 5 minutes. Because I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not making this up.
I would love to see that.
This is just, but, you come out of the news world. I don't really understand why some of these very, very good reporters are afraid to ask about this. Because this is their children and their grandchildren's future, just like it is for us.
Yep.
But they won't do it.
No, they're not breaking it down. And I think, like we talked about, it comes from lack of time, lack of space, lack of information, and they think there's the next big story.
Well, I got a prediction now, and we'll see if this is right. I thought the infrastructure bill was going to be passed. If I was in Congress, I couldn't have voted for it because I don't know how it's going to be paid for. Okay? Now the Democrats are talking about, well, the Congressional Budget Office is going to tell us about how bad this $1.75 trillion social spending bill is, and we got to get those numbers. The numbers are going to be outrageously bad unless they're completely phony and made up. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think that bill's going to pass in any shape or form. I think that when it's finally said and done, that people are just going to have to come to the same conclusion. We've spent $6 trillion on COVID already. We've given so much assistance away and I'm all for helping people, but you got to fiscally run your house. This is the biggest business in the world, the United States government. I don't think that bill is going to get passed, but we're going to see.
I hope not. I have a question, and I don't know if this is even something that one can predict or answer. How long do you think it would take us to pay off the $29 trillion?
Eternity.
Eternity, okay.
How's that?
I was worried about that answer, yeah.
Is that long enough for you?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. How would you ever pay the debt down when you can't even balance your budget?
Yeah.
So in other words,
it's nearly impossible.
You and your life owe $1 million, but your deficit spending every year, and you're borrowing that money
and then
before you get to the $1 million.
And anything I could possibly pay, I would just be paying on interest.
Well, yeah, but at some point, you're not even going to be able to do that anymore.
Oh my God, that's scary. That's scary, and people don't understand that, or people aren't asking that.
Well, we'll see. But again, you got somebody, aunts, uncles, cousins, they want to come on the show, they want to debate this point, okay? A lot of points that I talk about can be debated. This isn't one of them.
I agree.
All right.
Challenge extended. I like it. All right, time now for headlines. 8 people have died after what law enforcement is calling a crowd surge in Houston. That's at the Travis Scott Astroworld Festival. It's a music festival in Houston. Many more were injured, and some are accusing Live Nation Entertainment, Inc. and Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation of negligence. Daily Mail reports 23-year-old Christian Paredes is suing Scott and surprise guest Drake, who said that they were inciting the crowd as they continued to perform even as the crowd, quote, became out of control. Paredes said is suing for more than $1 million. 50,000 people were there that night, and 11 people were taken to the hospital in cardiac arrest. The AP reports, quote, investigators are expected to examine the design of safety barriers and the use of crowd control in determining what led to the crush of spectators. Right now, the vigils are taking place to remember those who were lost. And 2 Iowa students in high school have been charged with killing their Spanish teacher. CNN reports Sunday, Nohema Graber was reported missing and her remains were discovered in a park in Fairfield. She was a Spanish teacher at Fairfield High School. 16-year-olds Willard Noble Chaden Miller and Jeremy Everett Goodell have both been charged with first-degree murder and are being held on a $1 million bond. A, quote, associate of Goodell and Miller told investigators how the two had planned to kill Graber and the motive behind the killing, which hasn't been released to the public. A primary hearing is set for November 12th. And last week we talked about the Merck pill. Well, now Pfizer has come out with a pill claiming to cut the chance of hospitalization or death in adults from COVID-19 by 89%. That's a higher percentage than the Merck pill original data. The full trial data is not available yet for either company. NewsRax reports that the Pfizer study consisted of 1,219 patients and found that, quote, 0.8% of those given Pfizer's drug within 3 days of symptoms onset were hospitalized, and none had died by 28 days after treatment. That compared with a hospitalization rate of 7% for the placebo patients. Pfizer's drug is supposed to block the enzyme the virus needs to multiply. Merck's essentially introduces errors into the genetic code of the virus. The UK has a hold of both company drugs, and soon the US should as well. And the city-county of Oroville, California, has voted in a 6-1 resolution to declare itself a constitutional republic last week. So the city cited the Governor Gavin Newsom's health regulations as the reason. The Guardian reports the city, quote, refused to enforce state requirements prohibiting indoor dining, but county, where Oroville is located, declined to recommend a mask mandate earlier this fall. The mayor, Scott Thompson, said he wanted to draw the line. He said, quote, this has to do with the large amount of mandates that are affecting every aspect of our lives and our kids' lives. The American culture and way of life is being challenged at its very core and perverted by radicalized politicians who have forgotten that as a republic, the power belongs to the people. This means they can essentially opt out of any executive orders from the state or country they find clearly overreaching or violating constitutional rights. And 27 states have filed lawsuits against Biden's vaccine requirements for private companies. Thursday, OSHA issued the requirement saying businesses with more than 100 employees must be vaccinated against COVID-19 by January 4th, or they have face mask requirements and weekly tests. Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt said this mandate is unconstitutional, unlawful, and unwise. The administration said that they are prepared to fight the legal battles, and penalties include $14,000 per violation. Lots going on.
That's the news. Yeah. And that's really the show. And Sarah, it was a great show today. It's great being with you. Let everyone know again real quick how they get to us again.
All right, on Facebook at To Be Frank Show. And then, of course, tobefrankshow.com if you want to see videos, past videos, get all of our information. And then on YouTube, all you have to do is search The To Be Frank Show. And then, of course, we're on all of your streaming services. Anywhere you get your podcasts, we're there.
All right, so we'll see everybody on Thursday.
Yep.
And I'm sure we're going to have another boatload of stuff to talk about.
Always.
And so it's a good time to be doing a news show. But we'll see everybody Thursday. Take care of your families. Take care of yourself. Be safe, and we'll see you Thursday.
All right, we'll see you then.